a horror sci-fi thriller, according to IMDb. This is probably, for me, it leans a little more sci-fi.
This is
than
not
anything.
Yeah.
This is horror adjacent. I think it maybe gets that horror label for a couple scenes.
And the fact that Cronenberg
Yes.
is involved, and like before and after this movie, the stuff he did was certainly horror in that genre.
Right.
Yeah.
And thriller, I mean, I'll leave that up to the audience member because thrilling is, I mean,
It's got its moments.
a scientist trains a man with an advanced telepathic ability called scanning to stop a dangerous scanner with extraordinary psychic powers from waging war against non-scanners. Written and directed by David Cronenberg, starring Jennifer O'Neill, Stephen Lack, Patrick McGoohan, and they don't have him listed, but the wonderful, the perfect
The great Michael Ironside.
Michael Ironside, who is the star of this film.
Ironside could be in anything, and I'm in.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's just one of those actors where I'm like, yeah, okay. Love the guy.
So, just to set the table of where we're at, we're doing 80s Cronenberg. This is his... So, I've seen it referred to as his 7th film. This is I'm going to say no. They're counting his TV movies, I think, as well. This is, I'm going to say his 1, 2, 3. This is his 4th movie because I start with The Rabid. When I look at Cronenberg's filmography, I start with The Rabid.
Yeah.
Then he did Fast Company, which I've actually never seen and was going to watch before the podcast. But he also, you know what? I forgot about Shivers. I start with Shivers, and then I go to Rabid, and then Fast Company and The Brood. So this would be his 5th film then. But The Brood, this comes right after The Brood, which was his...
Which we've talked about.
We've talked about, and... So, yeah, we'll start just reviewing our non-spoiler thoughts, because I'll say, I think The Brood is a better example of Cronenberg kind of melding his early stuff with where he would go later on with kind of more mainstream horror filmmaking or mainstream filmmaking. This I can see, like, this might be a little bit... This is one of the things where I don't think there is quite enough Cronenberg for me in it. It's one of those things where it gets a little bland in the middle, and he has talked about some of the production issues that he had in it. And I think that limits it a little bit. But I think this is a movie where the middle is very very trying to get through. I'll say this is a movie where the first 15 minutes are great, last 15 minutes are great, and then everything in between is fine. This is my second time seeing it. I watched it a long time ago as well. And I pretty much feel the same way as I did then. Willie, what do you think? How about you seen this one before?
Yeah, it's been a while. Here's the thing with Scanners is like everybody remembers the one scene in Scanners, and it's great. It's like really good. It's like as good as it can get in terms of pure horror, just and tension. But that scene's pretty early in the movie, and it never reaches those peaks again. You know what I mean? It just doesn't ever get there again. I think the finale works. I think there's bits throughout the film, sprinkled throughout the film, that make it kind of a fun, almost an on-the-run or espionage type thing. I think it attempts to do that, and I think it works sometimes. But it does feel like Cronenberg, but hindered by something. And I'm not familiar with all the troubles that took place or anything like that, but I can feel that on this. It doesn't quite feel like he was able to really unleash the Cronenberg like he is in some other movies, most of his other movies. That being said, I think the plot's awesome. The concept is awesome, I should say. Like the idea of these people kind of living among us that have, these amazing mental powers, and many of them are, because they're driven insane by the weight of those powers, many of them are people that we pass on the street, right? They're people that live on the fringes of society, and I like that idea, and I like the idea of somebody being sent in to infiltrate his own people, his own kind, right? I like that idea. There's some similarities to Blade Runner in that sense. Well, I guess it depends on how you feel about the whole Deckard thing, but like, there's some similarities there with Blade Runner where you have this guy who's like trying to track down people but not really having any sort of like personal stake in it necessarily. Like he's being kind of corralled by a powerful, in this case, company to do this for him, and he's kind of uncovering truths along the way. No, it's worth a watch, but it's definitely not. We're going to see much stronger Cronenberg as we continue throughout the summer of Cronenberg.
Right.
And that's not to say it's not worth a watch. It is worth a watch, but it's not. I don't think Scanners is a classic, in my opinion. I think it's a solid sci-fi bordering on horror movie.
I think this is a good transition from his Canadian tax shelter work, because this is the last of those Canucksploitation Canadian tax, and which I've got some notes on that later. We can talk about that a little later, but that kind of early Cronenberg stuff, I think what I see at least is a director who's outgrowing some of that type of lower, and he's ready to graduate into like melding his sensibilities, that body horror stuff with maybe a bigger budget and a bigger scope. This one almost feels like too big for its britches in some ways.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Like you said, the
concept is
so big that I don't think the movie and the size of it and the resources maybe with how it was made match that ambition.
I think I agree with you on that. Yeah. I do think a new Scanners would be cool.
Yes.
I think it's something that you could.
Darren Bousman. Is it Bousman or
Bousman?
Yeah, the guy who he did the Saw sequels.
He's involved in some of the Saw
sequels. Yeah. He was going to remake this, but wouldn't do it without Cronenberg's blessing, and he said Cronenberg didn't give his blessing, which is odd. I don't know. I don't know the story behind that. Honestly, I know Cronenberg has talked about this being and I do have some interview notes from him later too. But he's talked about this being kind of a struggle of a production, so maybe that plays into it too. But I'm with you. No, yeah, I would like to see. I think this is ripe for a remake. If anything is.
It doesn't even have to be a remake. Just a new movie about Scanners. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even if it's not a straight remake. So yeah.
And we watched The Boys, so we've seen plenty of heads explode.
Yes.
And although no, this is still a really good head explosion.
Yeah. It's really good.
It's really good.
This is up there. This and like Maniac has a really good head explode, the original. Yeah. And then Dawn has one or two pretty good head explosions. Dawn of the Dead.
I feel like watching Dawn again. I feel like watching Day again.
Dude.
Yeah.
Best score ever. Best score of all time.
Yeah. This is an early Howard Shore score too. By the way,
it rules.
Yeah, it's a really good score. The music and the sound is really good in this movie. The sound with the humming and there's some good stuff in this.
Sound
movie.
Design sweet. From a technical standpoint, this movie fires on all cylinders.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Pacing can be a little. Yeah.
Okay, so this movie made about $14 million at the box office.
Okay.
I believe it was more of it turned into more of a kind of like a word of mouth hit too. It was the highest grossing of his Canadian era movies, which ended with this one, with The Brood and Shivers and Rabid.
But this is certainly the most mainstream of those movies.
Yes, this is the most mainstream of those movies. It's been quoted in stuff like Wayne's World. Everybody remembers the Scanners exploding, the exploding head. It's kind of a great moment. But another thing that's kind of iconic about it is the VHS cover with the guy that's standing up and like got his
that's Irons. Is it supposed to be Ironside? It kind of looks like him a little bit, right?
Let me just look at it.
It
again.
rules. The cover's sweet.
It's really good.
It's one of those great '80s VHS covers. You know?
Yeah, it's Ironside, and he's got kind of like the flames coming from him, and he's straight up.
Yeah,
because this is supposed to be from the end of the movie.
Yeah,
yes, from the Scanners fight in the final finale of the movie. So, I think this movie was one of those kind of early home video hits as we went into the 80s too, and that's why we got stuff like those 90s sequels, those two 90s sequels.
Scanner Cop.
Well, there's also Scanners 2 and Scanners 3.
I know. There's 5 Scanners movies.
Yes, yes.
There's Scanner Cop 2.
They filmed Did they film those back to back? I know they filmed Scanners 2 and Scanners 3 like back to back.
Probably
in like 1990. They were released in 1991. So maybe that was Cronenberg's hold up. He's like, I love those movies.
Yeah.
They took my concept and made it sing. So
remake Scanner Cop. Then I'll give you my blessing.
we're going to go through the old Wikipedia plot summary.
Okay.
And I'm just going to stop after every paragraph or so, and we'll just talk about it.
Yeah.
We'll have a discussion. I always like that when hosts of like news shows or podcasts goes, let's have a discussion.
Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about scanners. Cameron Vale is a downtrodden vagrant who suffers from voices manifesting in his head. After involuntarily causing a woman to have a seizure with his telepathy, Vale is captured by the private military company Concept and brought to Dr. Ruth, who explains that Val is one of 237 superpowered individuals known as scanners, capable of telepathy and psychokinesis. Okay, let's talk. We can dive in a little bit more to the setup here. This is kind of a cool. This is like an X-Men.
Yeah, it's sweet.
It's like a comic book.
Yeah, this is what I'm talking about with the concept and the setup of the universe. It rules. This is cool. I could see this kind of story translating into books. A show, I hesitate to say show for anything at this point, but like a show, comic
someone
book
is
series.
Someone is listening right now and pitching this to Peacock.
I know. It's been pitched already, I'm sure.
Yes, this is someone's gone through and on an IMDb page.
Give me that sweet content.
Well, can we make The Brood into a show? No. Scanners.
Yeah, might be able to make that. I can't believe The Fly hasn't become something at this point. But yeah, I think the concept's pretty darn cool. So.
The movie also, I think, gets off to a good start. It takes you in from the jump. To follow up on the comic book, I've got a couple of snippets from a Fangoria interview. And just a heads up to anybody, I used to be able to find the Fangoria issues online. Some hero had uploaded all of those Fangorias, but I think Fangoria took them down. And it's fine because they've started to put up, I think they've got the first 80 issues or so up for free on their website. You just have to enter your email and you can get access to them. So this is from Fangoria number 10, which would have been January 1981 when this came out. He said, the dynamics are not what make it work. In fact, they're, did I get the wrong one? Okay, so you go to sleep weak and you wake up finding, in fact, that you are strong. Someone says to you, you are not weak, you are stronger than you ever imagine. That's one of the premises of the film that doesn't exactly come out that way. He talks about it kind of being kind of like I didn't clip the part, but he talks about it being kind of an adolescent fantasy. So like a comic book fantasy is what he's talking about there. Like you go to bed and you wake up and you're a superhero, basically.
Yeah, you could.
And this is superhero. I mean, had we had Superman, I think was it, right?
Yeah.
As far as like those modern ones.
At that point, yes. Dare I say you could do like a young adult version of Scanners, essentially. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
you could do a version like it is that like that really cool idea of waking up and finding out that you're special, right? That you're
He says, cool. I found what does lay behind the film is a fantasy, I think a very powerful one that I suppose starts as a child's fantasy is what he says. So that's where he's kind of pulling this from. So
okay.
Ruth injects Vale with ephemeral, which restores his sanity by temporarily inhibiting his scanning ability and teaches him to control his abilities. Consect is attempting to recruit scanners to stop a malevolent underground ring of scanners led by Daryl Revok, a former mental patient who trepanned his own skill to cope with the same uncontrollable stream of thoughts. Ruth explains that Vale's uncontrolled powers drove him mad and asks him to help infiltrate Revok's group. Revok, who is killing all opposing scanners, infiltrates a Consec marketing event and physically and psychically explodes the head of a domesticated Consec scanner.
It rules.
Sorry, Consec. How many times they use Consec in that?
Consec.
Yes, the head explosion scene. Yes, we should.
It's insane.
Let's talk about this. You know how they did this?
I imagine they shot it with a gun.
They shot it. The effect for the exploding head scene was accomplished by filling a latex head of the actor with dog food, leftover lunch, fake blood, and rabbit livers, and shooting it from behind with a 12-gauge shotgun, which they actually didn't use bullets. They used salt.
Okay.
Yeah, they used salt to shoot it and explode it.
It works.
Salt. Yeah.
It works. And that's the same thing they did with the Maniac and Dawn ones too. They just straight up shot the thing with a shotgun.
Yes.
Yeah, and you know what? Of course, the actual head explosion is like an all-timer, but I really think the scene works in terms of the tension. Like,
it's that music or that sound too.
Oh my god! It's like the performance of the guy whose head explodes, Ironside's performance, the reactions of the audience to what's going on in front of them, that music and that sound design building. It all works really well. It's very, very well done. It is the standout scene in the movie. There's no question, and it's not just because of the blood and guts, which is wonderful, but it really, really works. Yeah, it's great.
I think what works about it too is the special makeup artist, Stephen Dupuis. He said he compared it to, he likened it to the Death Star, but a human head, like when the Death Star explodes. Yeah. And I think that is
kind of fires into a billion area.
Yeah, spots, I think it's almost important because it allows you. It's almost so ridiculous looking, and it's such a, like he says, it's like the Death Star blowing up, that it's so comical that it allows you kind of a release to laugh. It's not like it's not like so nasty and gory and gross that you're turning away. It's one of those great moments that's fun because you can laugh at a guy's head exploding up because it's so cool looking.
Yeah, well, it's like the violence of like a Kill Bill, right? Where it's just so insane and bloody and nasty and over the top that you're like, you can't help but chuckle. Like, yeah.
A couple other quick picks on this. Dick Smith was the effects guy in this. He was working on Altered States at the time. He had worked on that for like 10 months. But he, of course, he did the makeup and effects for movies like The Godfather, The Exorcist, and he won an Oscar for Amadeus. So
he's an Oscar winner.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amadeus is the one he won the Oscar for makeup, I believe. Cronenberg, this is also from that Fangoria interview, and this kind of shows you when he was doing the interview kind of what the process was like in 1981, but he talks about getting an X rating for this sequence. It's also funny because it's funny to me when I look back at old trailers, especially, how not worried at all people are about spoiling movies in them. And like in interviews, he dances right up on just flat out spoiling some of the stuff in the movies. But he says, if we were to get an X rating from the MPAA and it becomes obvious that it's the head that would be the cause of it, he's talking about the exploding head in this, we'd certainly have to think about it, because the alternative of releasing it with an X would really be a shame. So he's basically treating it like an emergency and is basically like pleading, like, don't give me an X rating here,
please.
And I think they used the shot.
The head.
And he like pushed it further back into the movie so audiences, like late arriving audiences, could see the head exploding. So there you go.
Amazing.
Back to the plot. Consec security head Braden Keller advocates shutting down Consec's scanner research program, but Ruth, who believes the scanner's abilities are the next stage of human evolution, there's that X-Men. Again,
yeah.
He's very much a Magneto.
Yes.
Disagrees and notes that the assassination demonstrates Revok's danger. Ruth brings in Vale and asks him to help infiltrate Revok's group. Okay, we need to talk about the lead performance and some of the other performances here, because the lead performance, I think, by Stephen Lack, an unfortunate name for someone who does not give the best performance, because you can easily go, oh, he's lacking in
it's not great
in the charisma area.
Yeah, it's not.
This
great.
Is a lot.
I try not to be a dick about performances, but he's not very good. Like he's just not very good. I'm not convinced. How about that? Especially when he's up against Ironside, who I think is like legitimately terrifying.
At the time he was behind, he even says he was a secondary name next to Jennifer O'Neill, who was on something at the time, and then Patrick McGoohan who was from The Prisoner, I believe, was his big thing. McGoohan. So yeah, it gets killed in this movie. His performance, I've seen reviews of it, they all point to him. Like every review points to how bland he is. And I mean, it's one of those things. It's almost like a King character, where
100%
the guy he is kind of bland, but this world is so out there that you don't want your lead character to be too interesting. But
no,
it's more his performance, I think.
It's both. I mean, he's not a terribly interesting character, and he doesn't feel like he has a ton of agency in any real way, shape, or form throughout most of the movie. I mean, he fights back and he handles his business as the movie progresses. But it's also the performance, and I just don't think you get a lot from. I do think some actors can elevate even a role that's kind of on page. It's not terribly thrilling or exciting. It's more vanilla, I guess.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen here, but whatever.
Ironside's the standout, right?
He's amazing. He's amazing. Ironside rules. From the moment you see him, you're kind of mesmerized by the guy because he's just like, there's a coolness about him, but also like you're kind of freaked out by him, like you're kind of scared of him. He's like when you like go to a party when you're in like high school or like early college, and you don't have a ton of world experience, right? Yet, and at any one of those parties you went to, inevitably like that guy shows up.
Michael Ironside.
Yes. And I think you know what I mean. Like it's like some like that guy or that girl shows up, and they're a little bit older, and you're kind of interested in this person because you're kind of like, what's this person's deal, right? Because they like, there's a danger about them, but you're also kind of like, I don't want to get too close to that person because they might have a knife. You know what I mean? Every party I ever went to had somebody show up like that, and I was like, stay away from that guy. But also, I got to keep my eye on him and see what he's going to do next. Yeah, that's Michael Ironside.
So we talked a little bit about the production issues. One of them, there were some clashes on set between some of the actors and their egos, particularly O'Neill and Patrick McGoohan. I have to read this quote from the interview on Cronenberg on Patrick McGoohan because it made me laugh out loud because here it says he was ... and then Cronenberg says of McGoohan, very interesting, and they italicize interesting to work with. So he doesn't want to. He's trying very hard not to just bash.
He's Canadian. He's a nice guy. Yeah.
He says he's certainly a very brilliant man. He's also a very complex man and a very eccentric man. I don't think he would refute any of these. No 2 days were the same, except in terms of performance, which was uniformly brilliant. What a way! You're right. What a Canadian way to kind of get across, convey your annoyance with someone, but also compliment them at the same time.
Yeah. He's very good at his job, but I'll never work with him again.
Yeah, he goes, I've been very happy with his participation. And I should say,
sweetheart.
We're gonna bookend this series with 2 Stephen Lack performances because he comes back in Dead Ringers. Cronenberg liked him enough to bring him back, so there you go.
I haven't seen Dead Ringers in like years.
I've never seen Dead Ringers.
Okay.
The next 3 I've seen multiple times. A couple of them are my favorite. Maybe not. The Fly in Videodrome I love.
Sure.
And then I like The Dead Zone quite a bit.
I haven't seen that in years either, I don't think.
But Dead Ringers is going to be a new one, so I'm excited for that. Unknown to Ruth, Keller is working for Rivak as a mole and informs him of Ruth's infiltration plan. Yeah, we're getting into the kind of the dull stuff here.
Yeah.
Rivak, it reads interesting on paper, but there's not a lot of pep to it. Rivak dispatches assassins to follow Vale as he visits an unaffiliated scanner named Benjamin Pierce, a successful yet... I like Benjamin Pierce. That's the dude. Is that the dude from Jason X?
Is it?
Benjamin Pierce, I believe, is the... Let me double check this. I think it's.
I've seen the actor in stuff.
Yeah, I recognize him from Jason X. He's also been in other Cronenberg movies.
Was he the guy who?
He's the guy that calls on the phone, and he's kind of like, he looks like he's like lying in bed. Yeah. All right, Scanners. We're gonna look at Scanners right now. It hit the actor's name. I had it written down here, but we're gonna find out together because I think that's sometimes more exciting. Robert A. Silverman he's the reclusive artist here.
Excellent.
And he is the guy from Jason X. He's also in The Brood. And he will be in Naked Lunch. So he's worked with Cronenberg a few times. But
was he the reason why Cronenberg got involved in Jason X?
He may be, or he may, like, Cronenberg may be the reason he got involved in Jason X. Because I think it was just one of the things, too, where Todd Farmer has talked about this in interviews. I think it's just like they were in Canada and they asked him. And Cronenberg's like, yeah, but I want to be killed by Jason.
That's the coolest.
So, it's Rivak's assassin murder Pierce, but Vale reads Pierce's dying brain and learns a group of scanners led by Kim Obrist, who oppose Rivak's group. Vale tracks down Obrist and attends a meeting, but Rivak's assassins strike. Again, only Vale and Obrist survive. So, there are some Cronenberg themes that we will see quite a bit. I think in the next few movies, there's like political and government conspiracies here. There's a corporate conspiracy.
Yeah, he's distrusting of authority, for sure. I mean, that's present in pretty much all of his movies.
Yep.
In some form. Yeah, and that's very present. Yeah, I don't think you get as much of that in movies before Scanners of his. I'm trying to think of it. I don't think there's a lot of that necessarily in
in Rabbit and Shivers.
In Rabbit or Shivers.
Yeah. The Brood is very much a...
The Brood has it.
The Brood has it. The Brood is very much him working, and he's working through his divorce, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
The Brood has some of it, though, I would agree. But this one is... I feel like the first time you really feel that kind of distrust of government, corporations, anybody who's in power.
Yes.
Yeah.
For sure. Yep, and you will see that a couple times very soon. Mm-hmm. There's also like an uprising in this. I mean, from an oppressed group, an individual. That's pretty obvious.
Yep.
There is some body horror here. It's a little bit different. Obviously, the head explosion, but even the telepathy. And the humming and all that stuff. There's some stuff early on where like the bodies are put on display. That's all there. There's, I mean, a piece of human junk. One character calls another. The interesting stuff for me was in this part of it, because a lot of the horror is in the mind in this movie. Revolves around the mind, and they talk about rehabilitation through art, and then they talk about the voices in my head keep driving me crazy, and that's kind of another form of body horror. But it's also, there's a part where I think it's Pierce says, my art keeps me sane. Like, that's what keeps him sane. And to me, that kind of sums up a lot of Cronenberg's like ethos, like his entire like his body of work is like because he is such a like an analytical mind.
Yeah.
What seems to keep him sane is work,
creating
yeah. And his art. And I mean, I think this seems to be saying like you kind of have to have something like that to tether yourself and keep yourself sane. Not just art, but work or family or anything.
Well,
like
I mean, okay, like I mean, look at what we're doing right now, right? Mm-hmm. So like I think people need. I think you like. Great for everybody out there who is able to find a career or a path like that is also something that they're very passionate about and is like was their dream to do that thing. I think it's fantastic. I do not begrudge those people anything, but most people that's not the case. Let's just be honest here. Generally it's not the case. Doesn't mean you don't like your job. Doesn't mean you don't enjoy the work you do per se. But most people aren't passionate about the work they do. I don't think, by and large. What's important, I think, for those people is to find an outlet, find something that they are passionate about, find something that is creative that lets them release that part of themselves and get it out there. Because I think if you don't have that, I think you do.
You sit around
and you go kind of nuts.
The last couple of years, I don't know how you feel. I was thinking about this today, actually, is like, if I didn't have this podcast, especially like a year or two ago, like something to focus on every week or two,
yeah.
like this outside of just sitting at home and staring at my computer screen or sitting, anywhere and staring at data all day or whatever. Yeah. Like if I didn't have something to work on,
outlet.
Like I would have gone crazy.
No, I agree, and it's not, and that's no, we're both married men. That's no slight against our wives. I have a little one. That's no slight against her. Those are important things, and I love the time I spend with my family.
Right.
As do you, but you need something for yourself as well. So I think I think it's important.
Yeah.
And for any of you out there that are struggling and like, because I know there's people out there that are struggling and feeling kind of, find there's something for you.
Right.
Find something. Journal. Do something.
Yeah.
It sounds silly like we're bringing this up during Scanners, but it's an important thing. I really think it's important. There's so many cool things out there that you can do and try, and don't be afraid to, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that section with Pierce and the art is the most interesting part of the second act of the movie for me, because it finally feels like Cronenberg saying something here.
It's thoughtful.
Yeah.
There's a thought behind it. Yeah. And then of course it devolves into
the government conspiracy stuff and the corporate conspiracy stuff is all there and stuff too. But that's all there. That's all comic book stuff. But the stuff that feels like Cronenberg like stepping in and like saying, this is why I'm making this movie. That's the stuff that really grabbed me.
I would have liked to have spent more time with that character.
I would have liked it. Or at least done something else to really flesh out that theme. But
thematically to do, because like I said, unfortunately, as soon as you're kind of introduced to the character and the theme, it just kind of gets literally and figuratively blown away.
So Vale learns of a pharmaceutical company, Biocarbon Amalgamate, which he soon discovers Reebok, what a name, Reebok is using to distribute large quantities of ephemeral under a Consec computer program called Ripe. Vale and Obrist return to Consec to investigate, and Ruth admits that he founded Biocarbon Amalgamate and suggests Vale cyberpathically scan the computer system to learn more. God bless whoever put together this Wikipedia page.
It's a lot.
Keller attacks Obrist and kills Ruth while Vale and Obrist flee the Consec building. Isn't there a band, a lead singer called like Connor Obrist that I'm thinking of here?
There is.
Yes. Well, I finish off this paragraph. Find me who Connor Obrist sings for.
I know this name.
Vale cyberpathically hacks into the computer network through a telephone booth and downloads ephemeral shipment information directly into his mind. Keller is killed when the computer explodes during his attempt to intercept Vale. I want to touch on a couple things real quick. Bright Eyes. Yes. Okay. Connor Obrist. Yes, maybe he's related. Maybe they're a Canadian band.
There you go.
Bright Eyes, that's right. They're a band who, that's a callback to the original Planet of the Apes, I believe. She refers to it as Bright Eyes.
Delightful.
Yeah. This is a movie that does not it doesn't get really exciting. Oh, there's the stuff have we got to the seance yet? The seance is coming up, isn't it?
Yeah.
The seance is kind of fun, but like there's a part in this movie where there's an action scene where someone's just standing in a phone booth, like acting into a phone, like.
Yeah. Yeah, and then some computer screens blow up. Yeah. It's not the most exciting. The shootout in the barn or the whatever kind of works. I mean, it keeps you're like, oh, okay. Like I said, even though it kind of cuts short the cool thematic stuff they're doing, it at least pumps up the action for a minute or two. But then we kind of get back in a little bit of the doldrums with some of this stuff.
So this is a good point to talk about why maybe it is so maybe a little bit boring.
Sure.
In the middle because of what it was working with money-wise. I want to talk about Canadian tax shelter movies here.
Oh, man, I can't wait.
Canucksploitation, if you will. And there's a website called Canucksploitation that really does a good job of cataloging this. I'm going to give a brief history here.
Sure.
In 1974, there were just 3 feature films produced in Canada. And then all of a sudden in 1979, there were 77. There was a tax loophole called the capital cost allowance, which let investors take tax deductions for their investment in Canadian produced movies. In 1974, that deduction limit was raised to 100%, creating a tax shelter and a rise in the number of Canadian made productions. So that's why you see stuff like this. Cronenberg, those early Cronenberg movies, and Ivan Reitman is another one. And we'll talk a little bit more about the horror movies here in a second. But a familiar name here is Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau, whose son is Justin Trudeau, I believe, the current Prime Minister, but he was the Prime Minister back in the day. He was the one that decided in 1974 to kind of sweeten those tax shelters.
Okay.
That's what it worked. It peaked in 1979 with 77 films. But he's a really good quote because some of these movies were not the best. Some of them were just not everybody was David Cronenberg at the time. Some of these people were just making trash to make it. And he says, there are now many Canadian films, but there aren't too many good ones, are there?
That rules.
A couple of other figures is Don Johnston, not Don Johnson. Johnston. He was a tax lawyer in Montreal. He would forever change the course of the Canadian film industry while putting together the financing for Paul Arnold's film, The Act of the Heart. Johnson realized that Canada's tax rules included little-used provisions that allowed investors to claim 60% capital cost allowance. So he was kind of what was meant for that every dollar an investor put into the film production, they could reduce their taxable income by 60 cents, and then it would raise to 100%. So he's the lawyer that kind of found it. A couple of other ones. Michael Spencer was a former editor and cameraman at the National Film Board who believed Canada's industry had enough room for art house and genre films. So he did a lot of art house stuff. One immediate effect, John Dunning, Cinepix. This is the one I wanted to talk about. Cinepix soon became home to those looking for an alternative to those kind of stuffier art house films that I mentioned there just a second ago. They were the company that attracted producers like Don Carmody and Ivan Reitman too, but also David Cronenberg. They specialize in kind of controversial stuff like Death Weekend, Blackout, and Ilsa, She-Wolf of the SS. But they also did... Yes. They were also the ones responsible for Ivan Reitman's classic movie, Meatballs.
Meatballs. It's been years since I've seen Meatballs.
Yeah, me too.
Is Murray in the original Meatballs?
Murray's in the original Meatballs.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I think Meatballs is the one. Was he in one of the sequels?
There's like 7.
No,
of those
he had
movies,
never done a
right?
sequel until Ghostbusters 2, I think is the thing. There are 7. One of them has an alien. It's like a boxing alien. Like there's a boxing match between an alien.
Corey Feldman becomes the lead of the Meatballs movies after a while, right? Am I right about that?
I think so. But I want to say Meatballs is the one where Ivan Reitman was looking for Bill Murray one day, and it turned out he was following a minor league baseball team around.
So sweet.
But they also Cinepix. They also made movies for our horror fans here. My Bloody Valentine and Happy Birthday to Me, kind of those slashers. Harold Greenberg, Astral Bellevue Path Limited, that was his company. He gave Oliver Stone his start with his debut movie Seizure. He produced The Little Girl Who Lived Down the Lane. He also did Death Ship, Terror Train, and Porky's. So those are just some of those movies. Cronenberg, of course. Cronenberg was interesting because his tax shelter era movies are Shivers, Rabid, The Brood, and Scanners. And Fast Company as well.
And there's a sleaziness to Shivers and Rabid that feels... You see the Cronenberg stuff, but it's very low budget.
Yes.
And there is a sleaziness to those movies where you know... I could see a lot of people at the time considering those movies to be in the... What Trudeau said was the not so good. Like, I enjoy them, but,
There was a writer named Robert Fulford who wrote an article called "You Should Know How Bad This Film Is. After All, You Paid for It." And he's taking aim at Cronenberg specifically, and he calls, I can't remember which one he calls, I want to say Rabid, the most repulsive movie I've ever seen.
It's got to be Rabid.
which first of all, is probably very good, was probably very good for Cronenberg's and Rabid's box office.
Loved it.
But it's also funny because you look at Cronenberg now, out of all those movies, because Bob Clark is another one we should mention who did Black Christmas around this time. But Ivan Reitman made a movie called Cannibal Girls with Eugene Levy. You get all these guys, and you look back at it now, and Cronenberg's like the most well-respected director out of all of them.
Yeah.
And he cut his teeth in this stuff, and he was the one that this gentleman, Robert Fulford, and a lot of people were coming after.
Like eviscerating.
Yes.
Yeah.
Eviscerating.
Sure.
So there you go.
For sure.
That's a very quick history of Canucksploitation. But if you want more, and you should, because there's some good stuff. But yeah, Canucksploitation, I believe, .com is the website.
Excellent.
You can check it out. Back to the plot.
Yes.
Vale and Obrist. Oh, do you want to watch Cannibal Girls with made by Ivan Reitman and starring Eugene Levy, by the way?
Yes. The answer is yes.
Mark that down. Vale and Obrist visit a doctor on the list of ephemeral recipients where they discover that it is being prescribed to pregnant women, causing their children to become scanners. Revik and his men ambush and abduct Vale and Obrist, taking them to the biocarbon amalgamate plant. I hate that name so much because I've had to pronounce it 3 times now. Revik reveals to Vale that they are both Ruth's children, and he developed ephemeral as a sedative for pregnant women. Ruth learned about the drug's side effect during his wife's pregnancy and made them the most powerful scanners in the world by administering a prototype dosage before abandoning them. All right, stop. Ephemeral. This may or may not have been inspired by a scandal in the 1950s. Women who were taking thalidomide during pregnancy began to give birth to children suffering phosomelia or other physical deformities. In the late 1950s and early 60s, the use of thalidomide in 46 countries by women who were pregnant or who subsequently became pregnant, resulting in the biggest man-made medical disaster ever, with more than 10,000 children born with a range of severe deformities, as well as thousands of miscarriages. So there you go. A fun little fact. A fun little,
There's a
look back.
A line in a Slipknot song about thalidomide babies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which song is that?
I don't remember. But I remember thinking, like, wow, that's pretty intense.
This is this is kind of back-to-back pregnancy-focused movies because he did The Brood too.
Yeah, there's something going on there.
I should mention this is I can't remember the name of the original scripts, but this was based on a couple of early scripts by Cronenberg. that kind of morphed into this.
Okay.
So there you go. So yeah.
Well, it's funny. He's not afraid to reuse. Well, a lot of great filmmakers aren't, afraid to reuse ideas they had,
right?
From before. Crimes of the Future. He made a movie called Crimes of the Future
way back in the day, right?
Completely unrelated. He just likes the title.
Hasn't this one been kicking around? That's kind of a
Crimes of the Future. Yeah.
An author or director thing is you work on stuff for a long time until it's ready, and then
I think he's been talking about this one, or it's been brought up before, certainly.
Yeah. Surgery is the new sex, by the way. That's the tagline.
That's good. That is the most Cronenberg shit
he
to
seems
say.
to be having fun again.
He does.
Yeah, he does seem to be having fun. I don't know if he was ever not having fun. It's just his movies, his more recent work has really left me cold and really uninterested in seeing. Those two Pattinson movies I never even got around to watching.
So, like History of Violence was like phenomenal.
History of Violence.
And Eastern Promises rules
very
good.
Too. I thought that was underrated. I think people slept on that because History
Eastern
of Violence
Promises?
is so good. No, Eastern Promises. Oh, yeah. That's
it rules.
It's so good.
It kicks ass. He was talking about doing an Eastern Promises sequel, and I was like, yes, like, let's go. Like,
yeah.
I hope it happens.
I think because it's Eastern Promises maybe isn't as weighty as
it's not.
History of Violence is, but it's still really cool. And I think it gets shafted a little bit in comparison to the two. And it's a different movie. Oh yeah, you're right.
The Vigo bathhouse fight. All right, Tim, I know what you did. I see what you did there. But yeah, after that it was like Cosmopolis and
A Dangerous Method. I watched some of because we were at the video store at the time.
Not for me.
No, I was just like us.
And then he did one more after that I wasn't, super.
Let me check here.
Super into. But
yeah, his '90s stuff is interesting. Oh, Maps of the Stars.
Yeah.
Crimes of the Future.
Him and Vigo though, I love the pairing.
Yes.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Beautiful stuff.
So I got to dive back into the plot.
Oh yeah,
let's finish this bad boy out because we're at the end.
Yeah, the grand finale.
Reebok plans to create and lead a new generation of scanners to take over the world by mass distributing ephemeral, but Vale refuses to join the plot. A telepathic duel ensues. This part is awesome between the brothers, during the course of which Vale's body is destroyed and burned. However, when Obrist encounters Reebok, his head scar has vanished and he speaks in Vale's voice. Vale had switched consciousness with Reebok in the last minute. So this is almost in a way kind of your final scare.
It's sweet.
The final battle is really fun.
It rules. What's funny is like it shouldn't be as good as it is because it's just two guys kind of thinking at each other, for lack of a better, like they're thinking at each other.
Yeah,
that's how they fight. But it's really intense and kind of gnarly, and you get some nasty vascularity and stuff going on, and boils and flames and screaming, and it's sweet. But I do like the last bit with the switcheroo. It's not set up, I don't think, at any point through dialogue or through anything that happens that a scanner could do that. But I totally buy that they could because why not? They've shown us they can do all sorts of crazy cool stuff with their minds. So
yeah,
I dig it. I think it's cool. And like you said, it's a good final scare because it is, but it isn't. Right? It's kind of a cool. He pulls that kind of blanket or whatever off, and you're like, oh shit, he lived. And, I like that. I dig it. His eyes are a different color too, which I like. It's cool.
I was thinking about this earlier today, and I have not done enough one-to-one research to really confirm this, but there are some parallels to Prince with David Cronenberg for me. So,
okay.
So,
I'm all ears.
1980 is Dirty Mind, which would have been around. That would be The Brood, because I think that Dirty Mind is Prince's first masterpiece to me, and I think The Brood is like Cronenberg's first great work for me. Then 1981, Prince released Controversy, and Controversy is not as good as Dirty Mind, but it's kind of a weirder follow-up, a little bit messier follow-up, similar to what something like Scanners would be, which came out the same year. Okay. But then you start to get into Prince's masterpieces like 1999, Purple Rain, Sign of the Times, and that's when you start to get that 80s, like that mid 80s run that Prince had is very similar and around the same time to Cronenberg's run, which we've got coming up, which would be Videodrome. So Videodrome would be his that I guess would be his 1982. That would be his 1999. That kind of works actually. It does. And then 1984, Purple Rain would be, I guess, his Dead Zone. So that maybe that. Would you say Dead Zone or The Fly would be kind of his most mainstream?
The Fly.
Yeah, I think
when
so
I
too.
think of Cronenberg, I think of The Fly.
When it comes to especially like his mainstream, that's the one I think of too.
Yeah. And it's kind of, if somebody asked me like I want to try some Cronenberg, I would say do The Fly first.
Me too.
Because it's a perfect blend of his sensibilities leading up to the Fly, but it has a Hollywood sheen about it and a budget behind it and the performances and stuff. Yeah, The Fly is his masterpiece, like his, for sure. Yeah.
He talks, so in that, just one more, maybe a couple more things on that Fangoria interview. They talk a little bit about what's coming next for Cronenberg, and let me see if I can find the exact thing. And there's one other thing I have to touch on, because I read
It's
the
always
letters.
fun to look back on these things.
Yes.
And see what the quotes were at the time, and now obviously knowing what the actual...
They talk about what's coming up
would hold.
next. Yeah, what's coming up next for him, and it's the section is titled Cronenstein, because he was rumored to do a Frankenstein movie.
Would have been a great fit.
Yes, and he says, I don't intend to remain literally faithful to the book. It doesn't interest me to do a period piece, which is what it would be. There's a movie called Victor Frankenstein with Per Oscarsson as the monster. I believe it was a Swedish-Irish co-production. It was incredibly faithful to the book, and as a result, it was a lonely, bleak art film that mainly dealt with one or two people in a room. It was a very interesting little film, and it did some things that I've never seen in any other Frankenstein. So in terms of theme, I would like to get at some things in some ways that haven't been done before in terms of plot and detailing. So he's talking a little bit about it, but isn't The Fly is kind of his Frankenstein movie in some ways, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting because obviously The Fly is a remake, and it's easy to forget that. I feel like The Thing and The Fly people forget sometimes because the remake became so much more of a touchstone. And The Blob sometimes too. I think people forget even though The Blob, like the classic one, is like The Blob. Sometimes people forget it's a remake too. I think. But yeah, the Fly is very Frankenstein-esque, and it's certainly his version of it. It's somebody who's falling apart and like
man's search for something beyond and touching the gods.
The only difference, obviously, the big difference is that instead of creating a creature, he turns himself into the creature. So that's the big difference. Is there's a self-loathing aspect to The Fly that isn't necessarily present in Frankenstein.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it's very similar.
Yeah, he says thematically the idea of a parent creating a child and then rejecting the child and having the child reject the creator, that is a story. In Mary Shelley's terms, it was also the story of man and God. Her opening quote from Paradise Lost sets that up. I'd never thought of it before, but once the idea was suggested to me, it suddenly became obvious that in a sense it was the idea I'd been working with from the beginning. So he even admits, like, this would be right up my alley. This fits right in with what I do thematically, and it would, but it's one of those things that's almost like too perfect of a fit that it never happened. So.
Yeah, and it never would have been as good as you were thinking it. Like,
right.
Because any fit that perfect on paper is never going to quite match up to, sure.
The other thing I wanted to bring up here, and I'm hoping I can find it real quick.
I feel like
fill some time here.
Everybody wants to do their version of Frankenstein or Dracula.
I found it. Okay.
That's like a classic.
Yes.
All filmmakers want to do that. Like horror filmmakers want to do their version of
especially that generation of filmmakers who grew up on those movies. Yep.
Yeah, now we're dealing with a generation who wants to do their own slasher movie or their own, because they grew up on the stuff we grew up on.
Right.
Yeah. Kind of different, but...
So I've referred to this Fangoria issue. I have to talk about this because I swear to you, this is Gene Siskel writing in under an alias. And I refuse to believe otherwise. He says, Dear Fangoria, it's called Blood Siskel in the Ratings. Dear Fangoria, there is or used to be a distinction between horror films and atrocity films. A distinction that Gene Siskel seems to understand a whole lot better than you do. If the distinction is ever reestablished and the domains of nightmare are reclaimed from the goremongers, it will be thanks to people like him. No thanks at all to you, sort. Hooray for Mr. Siskel. And then this gentleman's name is Galen Peoples from Bloomington, Indiana. It's Gene Siskel that wrote that.
100%. I laughed when you first said that because it's really funny, but no, it's Gene. Yeah. It's Siskel. I like Siskel.
I did
Siskel. But that is Gene.
Yeah,
writing in and being a twat about.
I'm sure I like to every once in a while, I like to read Ebert's reviews of some of the more well known stuff, and he was a champion of some of Cronenberg's earlier work. He wasn't so much of a. I actually fit right along with Ebert on this one, where he kind of says the effects are good, but there's not a lot to get me engaged in the story, and I'm with him.
I don't
on that.
disagree. Yeah.
So he was a champion of some of his earlier stuff, but not so much Scanners. But I don't remember what his thoughts were on.
I love it.
So there you go. Final thoughts. Scanners.
Yeah. It's worth a watch. It's not his best. It's not the most interesting Cronenberg's been. I think it's one of the less. I've seen most of his stuff. There's a couple like reevaluations I have to do as we go through the summer of. Dead Zone needs a reevaluation from me. It's been a little bit.
Okay,
and
cool.
Dead Ringers really needs a reevaluation because it's been a long, long time. This is on, look, it's on lower end Cronenberg for me, but even lower end Cronenberg is still worthy of a look. If nothing else, for the head pop scene and the grand finale, which I think is really, really pretty great. So, yeah.
Perfect. All right, that's it. We're going to be back next week with, I believe it's Videodrome up next, right?
Absolutely.
So there we go. Check us out. Yeah, all your favorite social medias. Also, if you want to just, we've been uploading these to YouTube. It's just the discussions. So if you're one of those people who are like, hey, why are you talking for the first 15, 20 minutes?
Yeah,
of the
quit
episode?
chit chat.
Quit chit chat. If you don't like our banter, our world class #1 A+ banter, then check out our YouTube page. I just upload. I usually cut out the. Cut it out. I just put the film discussion up there.
I mean, you should love our banter, but we get it. It's fine. We're not offended.
I'm real quick. I'm making sure we're doing. I'm getting the dates right with Videodrome here.
Yeah.
Willie, anything else?
No. I'm pretty excited to keep, trudging through the depths of Cronenberg's squishiness. Because if there's one thing his movies are, it's squishy.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
We've got a very squishy one coming up next. It is Videodrome.
It's very squishy.
Yes, this is a movie that I love, and I'm hoping it holds up. So,
yeah. Do you own a copy of this?
You know what? I don't.
Okay. Yeah, I don't either. So we're gonna have to rent this one.
Yeah, we are gonna have to rent this one.
I own Scanners.
And for those people who do have, I want to say this bad boy might be on. Oh, Videodrome. Thank you, David. It is only an hour and 29 minutes. Oh, you know what? We don't have to pay it all, because guess what?
Tubi?
Videodrome is on Tubi. The saviors of
Hell
Tubi.
yes.
Oh, wait. Maybe I'm wrong.
Oh,
I clicked
no.
on it. Just a second.
What have you done? Tubi is... If you're asking me...
Oh, Videodrome is on Tubi. Don't worry.
If
you just have to search for
Tubi or not Tubi, the answer is Tubi. No
I want to say it might be on HBO Max as well. So
okay.
If you pay for HBO Max and you are sitting there going like, it's not on HBO Max. I was gonna say if you pay for HBO Max and you're like, I'm getting what I pay for, I'm gonna watch it on HBO Max.
I don't want the ads.
Yes, I'm not watching it. So,
Tubi is my favorite streaming service.
Oh shit, Debbie Harry's in.
Yeah.
Videodrome, perfect.
Yeah, so excited. Anyway,
right.
Fantastic. Can't wait.
Yes, we will see you next time.
Yes.
Stay safe, everybody.